under God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all. For all.
This meeting is being recorded for district purposes. It is or may be published in part or in its entirety on the district's website without the express permission of meeting participants. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Angus,
Here.
Mr. Campbell,
Here.
Mrs. Curtis,
Here.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Here.
Mrs. Manganello,
Here.
Mr. Metz,
Here.
Miss Pedigo,
Here.
Miss Young,
Here,
Mrs. Fisher,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. Can I have the sunshine law, please?
The Board of School Directors held an executive session on Wednesday, January 13th to discuss personnel matters.
Thank you. We do not have any amendments to the agenda or approval of the agenda this evening. We're going to move forward to presentation. June, are we able to, do we know if the winning participants are attending the meeting this evening?
I do believe a couple of the kids are. If you can unmute your video.
Kids, if you can just say your name if you're here. I see Madison. Hi, Madison.
Hi.
Natalie, and I believe that that is Lake Brandenburg, or either here.
I believe Natalie was to be on.
Natalie, if you could unmute, honey, if you're here. Are we able to check, June, if are you able to see?
Keith, do you see last name Dunn showing up on email? Keith, are you out there?
I'm looking.
Okay. Oh, I see.
I do not.
Okay. Okay, that's okay. Okay, first this evening, we'll start with Madison since she's present tonight, excuse me. Madison Curry, 5th grade, Economy Elementary, and you can see on the screen that Madison's card is in the first picture. We thought it was beautiful, Madison.
Awesome job.
There were some tough choices, really great pictures. We're very proud of you, and we're proud to say you represent Ambridge Area School District, honey.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Lake
Congratulations.
Brandenburg. I'm sorry, did I catch it? Get everybody? I would like to say, honey, when we do go back to live meetings, I'd like to ask for you to publicly come. We'll arrange a time, okay, with you and the other two to give you a little something in person and shake your hand, hopefully at some point in the future. Okay. The next candidate was Lake Brandenburg, 5th grade, State Street Elementary. Congratulations, Lake. Love that fireplace. Board, if anybody else want to offer congratulations.
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Great. And then Natalie Dunn, 3rd grade, Economy Elementary. Love your snowmen, Natalie. We're very proud of all of you. Thank you.
Congratulations to Natalie.
Congratulations, Natalie.
Congratulations.
Okay, moving forward. Dr. Pasquarella, can we have an update on the reopening committee, please?
Sure can. Thank you, June. So as we typically do, I'm going to just give a brief overview for the board here since the last time we met, like we did last month in regards to our reopening committee meetings. As you may recall, we were asked to have a grades 3 to 5 meeting, and that was held on 1/7. And the full committee was held 1/12. Okay, June, you can go to the next one, please. Okay, so just a couple bullet points. It was a great discussion overall. Probably can't summarize everything and do due diligence to the conversation, but a couple key points were the teachers will work to continue to provide breakout rooms for small group instruction, remediation, and enrichment as appropriate. They've already been using breakout rooms and found that to be successful, and plan on and trying to continue to do that. Teachers will also look for opportunities throughout the school day to allow for some of that social interaction and appropriate brain breaks. They've talked about that, whether that's just making sure we get that engagement amongst students when they're learning, or just trying to figure out ways that they could give some folks some breaks throughout the day. That was mentioned as well. And the teachers presented a need for professional development to discuss effective instructional strategies and best practices to engage students. And not just the sense of professional development, but the collaboration amongst each other to be able to work on that. So trying to balance, it was a good discussion about whether we balance some time and have some kids do some independent work, or whether we look at some other ways to do that. And there was great opinions on both sides, great feedback from the staff, looking at it both from educators and as parents. So I thank them for their work in this committee. So right now what we've decided to do is we did, since the beginning of the year on our calendar, have some time scheduled. So we are going to allow for some of our professional development time, at least an hour of that, hopefully, for them to meet as departments or grade levels to discuss, these type of professional development and collaboration to increase, engagement for their students and share best practices with each other, because that was something, as busy as they are and as hard as they're working, it's just difficult to even, make time to be able to do that with all the preparation. So again, thanks to the folks on the committee and 3 to 5, and thanks for their work day in and day out. We hope that they find that to be beneficial. And if there is a need for some future professional development and collaboration, we can continue to discuss that at a later time. So thank you to the 3 to 5 committee. Next slide, please.
Is it stuck, June?
I just changed it. Yeah, sorry, I'm having a real bad connection tonight.
That's okay. We're patient. Thank you. As the board said, thank you to everyone. So a couple bullet points about our full reopening committee meeting steps. We did have a split vote coming out of our committee of the members, some very good discussion, amongst the group, both educators, staff, professionals, parents, everyone that is on the committee that was able to attend. I really appreciate your work and feedback. And so with this, with the members that did attend, 17 of those voted to remain the same way and continue through virtual instruction, and to review as a committee in early February, as we have been doing in the past, continuing the same. 10 committee members voted to adhere to the recommendation, which is to go back to the hybrid model for all elementary school students and all special education and English language learner students K to 12 at the start of the second semester or sometime in February. This has been added to tonight's agenda following this, as the board will need to decide whether the students and staff will return and at what date in the hybrid model, and if they will follow the updated recommendations for closures for small and medium-sized schools, which we're going to get to in a minute. We also finalized that discussion by saying that we would have a full reopening committee meet again sometime in February, depending on how this vote goes, whether it would be earlier or mid-February. Hopefully have them meet again before the voting meeting in February. If you want to go to the next slide, June, just to hit the next 2 slides, just the board and community to understand the updated recommendations if the board does decide to go back per their recommendations. Fading in there.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's fading in.
There we go. It's better.
Okay. So the transition slide there, if you look down at the bottom, really, these are the new recommendations for small schools, which are students that have a building with students less than 500. And so that would be all 3 of the elementary schools that we have. And so you could look here that we have adjusted this a little bit, but it does let you know that if this is the case and we are in substantial, which is where we're at right now, should a school get 2 to 4 students or staff within the 14-day rolling period, the school would have to, they recommend the school would shut down for 3 to 7 days. And if there's 5 or more, it would shut down for 14. The only thing I will say to this is we have run into the past where even if there's one, if it's late in the day and we have to do contact tracing, sometimes we do have to consider,
Dr. Pascarella, excuse me, you're cutting out quite a bit. I don't know, is everybody else hearing that it's muffled?
Yes, I didn't know if anyone's speakers are on, but it doesn't look that way.
I was trying to check to see as well. You keep cutting in and out.
You are too.
You kind of
People
sounded
are
like,
unmuted is what I'm receiving texts as.
you kind of sounded like that just now too, but I could repeat what I said. I should have a very good.
Go ahead, I'll mute and see if.
Okay, so if you look at this slide, you don't have to go back, June, I'll just speak to it. And what I was just simply saying is that in the previous slide, can you hear me better now, first of all, before I start talking? No?
No, not
If we can have
particularly.
everyone, sorry, excuse me. If everyone else could please mute your phones so we
Mute.
can hear Dr. Pascarella, that would be greatly appreciated. We can't hear because of the additional background noise and that's why we can't hear him, because we can hear the surrounding noises. So if everyone else could please mute your phones, we can hear Dr. Pascarella speak clearly.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I know this can be difficult, so I appreciate your patience. What I was just saying is that although they have modified this to say in the previous slide for buildings that have less than 500 students, and that is full enrollment if everyone were here. They did clarify that to the best of my knowledge. So that would be all of our elementary students or our elementary buildings. If you saw that up to 4, we would have to close. I did make a comment that even though you need 2, the only thing I said is if it becomes an issue where we're trying to contact trace and keep people safe and it's late in the day, sometimes I've had to make a decision to wait a day to make sure we let the affected parties know. Hopefully we wouldn't, but again, this has been modified. When you look at the next one, this would be buildings 500 to 900 students. And you can see that they allow for a little bit more cases before a shutdown, 4 to 6. And then in a rolling period to shut down if you're in substantial would be 3 to 7 days, and 7 or more, and then you would shut down for 14 days. And that would be applicable to our middle school and high schools, even if we only have the special education and the English language learners come there. It looks at the total of the building, as what I was told. So they would still be considered, medium buildings of 500 to 900. I'll just end my points by saying that my recommendation was to remain the same at the given point to the board. My reason for that, although I respect PDE and what they've said, I don't see a major change in the data and the about face, recommendation now to let everyone in. What I heard from the conference, I do respect and have always respected that, as well as most everyone on the committee, board, and et cetera, which is that, they have mentioned that the reason why is the educational processes is struggling for elementary students and special education students and ELL students. And I think it's struggling for more than just those folks. But that being said, I don't think the reason we ever went to this was because we felt that it was a better educational model. So, I did go, I was one of the ones that did vote and the committee to stay the same. I do respect everyone's opinion, and I surely understand that this isn't the best way to educate, as do our staff, majority of our staff members. I won't speak for them, and our parents and our board members. So anyway, that's where I sat on it. But whatever's decided by the board, we will do our best to implement that effectively. My final comments really are to thank the committee for all of their work, to thank the board for their work, most importantly, to thank our parents, staff, and students, because I know this has been a challenge for each and every one of you. And I know it takes a lot of patience, and this is not the way, any of us want to do this. But it's for the safety and well-being of the kids, students, and community that we have been doing that. So no matter which way this goes, I hope you feel that we have been trying to be transparent and to communicate. We have been meeting as this group and giving updates consistently November, December, and now January at the board meeting, following our committee meetings. And we want to continue to work with you and respect your opinion and respect everyone's opinion and continue to give choice. So I'm going to stop there and just thank our staff and our parents and our students again for all of their hard work and patience. And thank you to the board and the committee as well. Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. I'll take any questions from the board if they have any.
Thank you, Dr. Pascarella. We also have quite a bit of public comment in regards to this very subject. So I do want to get to that too, but if the board has any questions before the public comment, or you want to hear the public comment and then discuss, I think that would probably be the better choice, as we have several items relating exactly to this subject.
I agree with that.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yes,
I agree.
Okay. All right. Public comment regarding agenda items only. In light of the state declared disaster emergency, the board has adopted modified public meeting and public comment processes consistent with the Sunshine Law. These modified rules have been published in a newspaper of general circulation and on the district's website. Public comment will only be taken in written formats via email in advance of the meeting. Public comments received in advance will be circulated to the board. All public comments regarding agenda items will be read during the meeting. All other comments will be summarized during the meeting. All comments must include the resident property owner's name and address. June? June, are you having difficulty pulling it up? Because our solicitor has copies as well.
I'll start, Mrs. Fisher, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
I know I won't do as well as June, but I'll try my best. And when she gets that figured out, we'll go from there. The first one that I have anyway, so just try to keep track. And if I miss any, please let me know, because I definitely don't want to miss any.
I'll try to keep an eye, Dr. Pascal.
Maxine Ganara. I'm writing this email to express my deep concern for our schools to reopen. We are going on 2 months of complete virtual learning, and while other districts are preparing to return, I have no information on our schools. There was a press conference yesterday where the PA Education Department clearly stated that they recommend reopening elementary schools. It would be nice to see Ambridge at least work towards the school. I have been so disappointed in the lack of communication from the school. Please acknowledge this email and how yesterday's recommendations will be followed. Do you want to read any of these that are the same first?
Pardon, it cut out a little bit, Dr. Pascarella. What did you say?
Would you like me to continue reading many of these that are the same?
Yes, I did
Okay.
speak with, you know what, I'll take this next one if you want. It's rather long. We can piggyback if you want.
I'm good with it. I'm fine. Sarah Burns,
Okay.
Fed Hills. To start, the teachers have done a phenomenal job of being flexible and accommodating students virtually over the past few months. I cannot say enough good things about the teachers. They have really stepped up and conquered many of the difficulties that have been thrown at them this school year. With tonight's meeting, the main question on every parent's mind is determining when the students will return to school in person. The school district has done a great job of keeping everyone updated on the cases of COVID in the school district. With the school district's transparency with COVID cases, I hope that the school district begins to be transparent about in-person instruction and when students will return to school. Parents have been left guessing and waiting for the students to return to school with no information or updates from the school. The goals and plans surrounding the students' education should be outlined for the parents so they understand the next steps and goals of the school. In most cases, there are no plans outlined for the students' education and what to expect in the upcoming months. While the current situation is ever changing, the school district should have a plan and be ready to implement educated decisions based on the given facts, as well as adjust their plan as necessary. While teachers have been excelling in virtual learning, students are still limited without in-person instruction. With the start of the new year, students are lacking the proper resources for learning because teachers were not allowed into the school to prepare worksheets and resources for future lessons. Therefore, parents are left printing out numerous worksheets at home if they have access to a printer, or their children are forced to complete all of their work online if applicable. This is unacceptable for student learning, and this doesn't even begin to touch on the social emotional development that is needed for students on a regular basis with in-person instruction. With this school board meeting tonight, I urge the school board to allow in-person instruction in the schools again in January. Many schools in the surrounding areas have begun to offer in-person instruction again, and I think it's in the best interest of Ambridge and its students to follow suit. I also stress that it is important for the school district to be transparent in not only the COVID cases affecting in-person instruction, but also plans and goals of the school to get students back in the classroom. For those families that still do not feel comfortable with sending their kids to schools, they should be given the option to continue virtual learning at home. Concerned parents. We are lucky enough to have a stay-at-home mom for our kindergarten and second grader. It's sad that our kindergartner is doing his work in the bedroom, missing out on all social skills he needs for first grade and beyond. Our second grader isn't doing great. We also take on 2 additional kids 2 days per week for a single mother who works. She has no option. Kid psychologists are booked out for these poor kids, hearing stories of depression. I know of districts that have never stopped going to school. It's time to follow suit. If others can, we can. The long-term repercussions of these decisions have me concerned. John Ferrangio. Good evening. I wanted to share some thoughts ahead of the board meeting tomorrow night about the kids returning to school. Our kids are not getting the education they deserve, and in a district like Ambridge, keeping kids engaged while school is in session is challenging enough. While education is important, so is the health of these students. School staffs are responsible for reporting over 80% of the child abuse cases, neglect, and many other forms of abuse. The district is allowing sports to resume. Kids play together after school and weekends. School should be a priority first and then resume sports. Have a plan. Keep the sick out of school with remote access and continue in-person school. It's the best for the health, safety, and education for the kids. Danielle Zachi. Ambridge has given their parents and families no plan in returning our children to school. We are allowing students to play contact sports, but not allowing the teachers and students to return to the classroom. This is absolutely unacceptable. These students have endured so much this school year and deserve the opportunity to learn in the classroom. I understand that not all parents feel this way, which is why the parents should be the ones to decide whether or not their children go back to school or remain virtual. It is hard to make sense of this district's decisions when surrounding districts in our county have found a way to make in-person learning work. Some districts never went hybrid and remained fully in person. This district should be doing whatever it takes to make this the priority. Sports should not be the priority, in-class learning should be. I don't understand how you make decisions to allow athletics in which the students have full body contact continue, but cannot find a way to get our students back into the classroom. It's simply unacceptable. Michael Winnie. I'm writing to request kids return to full-time in-class learning as soon as possible. This is in the best interest of the students and their parents who are desperately trying to keep up with their education. Even with adults at home, keeping the students focused on their schooling is becoming increasingly difficult. This is especially hard with additional siblings at home. Our first grade student is a new student in the school this year and is struggling emotionally with not having the opportunity to build relationships in the new environment and is becoming increasingly frustrated. Please help us get these students back in the school for both their educational and emotional benefits. Amanda Briscoe. I'm writing this evening in hopes that you will have a plan for parents and families for returning the students to in-person learning. With other districts in the area either returning or with a plan to return, there's simply no reason why our district cannot do the same. Contact sports have resumed without question. The priority has been placed on sports over in-person learning and has been very disappointing. While I fully support sports and activities, allowing our students to participate in contact sports, but not allowing them to return to the classroom is unacceptable. With the online learning model in place, parents have the option as to whether or not they want their children back in the classroom. The decision should be left to the parents and families to make the decision for their own household. Additionally, the Department of Education has recommended that students should be returning to in-person learning later this month, particularly elementary students. My hope is that in-person classroom learning will finally be a priority this evening, and we can allow our children to get back to some sort of normalcy in their education. Can you still hear me? Okay, good. Renee Spagnuolo. I feel that as a grandparent of elementary students, return to school needs to be addressed. I see the struggles they are dealing with. Emotionally, it is taking a toll on not only the student, but the entire family. If we could open the doors to contact sports, shouldn't we open them to in-person learning? That may not be right for all families, but the families that wish to send their children should be given that opportunity. I understand that these decisions are hard to make, but the other districts have been able to do in person and make it work. I hope Ambridge follows that direction. Heather Williams, Baden, PA. Now that the state officials and Department of Education have stated elementary schools should be open, what is the timeline to get the children back in the classrooms? How long can the administration hide behind their computers claiming virtual learning is working while the students suffer? We are surrounded by districts that have announced plans to return to the classroom this month, yet you sit in silence taking the easy way out. The only updates we receive are the fear-mongering emails and phone calls regarding positive COVID results despite no physical presence in any of the district buildings. The children deserve better. Shannon McKillick, Baden. Hello, my name is Shannon and my children are both in second grade at Economy Elementary. I strongly feel my children are losing out by not being in school. It's so hard to keep them focused all day, sitting in front of their iPads, and it's starting to show in their grades. Please consider going back to the classroom and get these children back on track. Deborah Cronkrow, Freedom, PA. What is the plan for our kids to go back to school in person 5 days a week? Our kids have not been in school a full 5 days since March 13th. I feel the kids who want to go back should be able to go, and the kids who want to stay remote should go remote. They should have a choice. This is affecting their mental health, especially seniors. Rachel Reichert, Ambridge. I have a freshman at Ambridge. I feel it would be safe and beneficial to return to school in person for any number of days per week, as long as the health and safety guidelines set by the PA Department of Education are followed. I feel that this was done properly during the 2 days in-person schedule that students previously had. Sherry Pa, Ambridge, PA. My hope is that the school board strongly considers a return to in-person instruction soon for the district. I've talked with several families that are struggling in virtual learning environment. My child is in kindergarten. Her teachers have been absolutely amazing. Even with all the parent-teacher communications and changes, virtual learning is still not what these 5 and 6-year-olds need. Now that we are into January, we no longer have paper packets from the school. This district decision has placed additional burden on teachers, the students, and parents. Printing is now delegated to the families, and the option to do those assignments on the iPad does not provide the fine motor skill practice that is needed for these young children. Additionally, we continue to see issues with bandwidth for multiple devices running live meetings in the home. Many students report problems to their teacher daily where the Teams meeting is lagging, not showing video properly, etc., causing disruptions to class. Please explore all options for how to have a safe return to in-person instruction. Thank you for your time and consideration. Kim Villela, Baden, PA. As a grandmother, local business owner, and taxpayer, I urge you to vote to reopen our schools and permit the children of our community to return to the classroom. Your decisions greatly impact the daily lives of those who live, work, and play in our district. Jocelyn Flum, I need to express my thoughts of going back. I'm a single mother of 4 kids. I have 3 that are in school and a 2-year-old. This has been an absolute nightmare trying to sit with 3 kids in different grades. My children are not learning anything at home. My son gets so upset and my daughter is falling so far behind. I by no means am a teacher. I work, and now because of my children not being in school, I had to quit my second job and cut back hours at my main job because I now need to homeschool my children. If I could go to the restaurant and sit without a mask, my children should be allowed in school with a mask. It has completely ruined how my children view learning. They are already falling so behind, and we need to allow them back to school. Please, I beg you to take this into consideration. Mary Lou Parrish, I was wondering if the kids with IEP plans could go back to being in person in school like Rochester School District has allowed their support classes and teachers. If the school board did allow this to happen, what date or how soon can it happen? Thank you for your time on this matter. Chelsea Carlisle. Both of my children attend Ambridge Area School District, 113 in the middle school and the other 8 in State Street Elementary. I understand this is a pandemic and everyone is affected in some sort of way, but I can only speak for myself and my children, and it's no good. My oldest is constantly struggling week by week. Grades are constantly fluctuating. He's having to put in extra time to make sure his grades are okay for eligibility for sports, which some cases are very difficult because doing work online and not in the classroom, he's having a lot of trouble understanding the assignments, no matter what help the teacher tries to offer. My youngest child needs to be in the classroom. I'm not sure how much more can stress this. She had an IEP for all major subjects, so of course school is not easy for her. My daughter has behavioral issues which are affecting her virtual learning drastically. Even her teachers are noticing and agreeing that she, of all the students, needs to be in a classroom because she does better all around. This being home and doing virtual learning is a struggle for my daughter and is very hurtful to watch as a mother because she is struggling. On top of the struggles my children are experiencing with myself as a mother is struggling. I have always worked daylight and cannot adjust my schedule very much. So many days my teenage has to step up and help my daughter. And as one can imagine, that doesn't go smooth. I know what COVID is. I know it is a risk, but my children are struggling with virtual. So basically what I'm saying is please get the children back in the classroom so they can properly learn and be educated. Lori Musser, Ambridge. I would like to make opinion and wishes public for the school to resume in person. I understand there are many factors that go into this decision, but I would like to note that many of you don't deal with the day-to-day care, instruction, and technical issues that arise with virtual learning. Regardless of the type of student, they are all seemingly struggling in one way or another. Those who need more focused are falling further behind. Those have social needs are missing out on socialization, and even the gifted kids are finding new hurdles to overcome. While it is a great option for those who want it, I feel the best place for my son, a Gates student, is in the classroom. I implore you to look at the real life situations and take each child, not only those who fit your agenda, into close consideration. Thank you for your time. Stephanie Piori, Freedom, PA. Like many other parents in the district, I'm looking forward to hearing the district's plan for some type of return to school. I recognize that full-time virtual learning is not ideal for the majority of learners, especially our youngest students. My own child is in first grade, and I understand the importance of face-to-face interaction with his teacher and a more hands-on learning environment. That being said, I implore the district and its board of directors to ensure that any type of return to school is done with caution and consideration for what is best for both the students and the staff. Some points to consider. In November, staff quarantine was a serious issue in our school. Learning was disjointed though I recognize everyone was doing the best they could. The majority of the time with a substitute was wasted, to no one's fault except this terrible pandemic. If the teacher needs to quarantine due to exposure, how can we ensure consistency of learning for our students? Would the district consider having all students in a particular class remain home so the teacher may continue the lessons with the most minimal disruption to the instruction? Class sizes at some point must be addressed within the district. 26 in a first grade classroom are too many, pandemic or not. We have a better chance of a safe return to school in smaller classes. Furthermore, when things return some type of normal, we will have many students who require extra assistance to bridge the learning gaps caused by the pandemic. This can be achieved with teacher mastery in smaller classes. I will continue to fight for our students to have this key component of their education met. If the board of directors does vote to return to school, has the district considered keeping the schools open on Fridays and alternating Garnet and Gray? so that every other week students will have 3 days in the classroom. I recognize it creates more complex schedule. Can the district elaborate on planned funding that is now available because schools were closed? For example, transportation, food services budget, among others, should have a surplus of funds given to the school closure. How will that money be redirected into the district budget, and can we use it for student services? The district should proceed with caution in a return to school as case numbers are high. I realize this must be done in accordance with the students having a right to their education. Teachers are in the next group to receive vaccinations, and a few additional weeks of planning and preparing to better align with the ever-changing PDE requirements would be appropriate. Michelle Wilson. As the association president, I understand more than most the pressure that comes from being in a position of leadership. Assumptions are made regarding your character. Personal and unkind comments are made on a whim without recognizing you are a person with feelings just like the people you represent. A lack of acknowledgement of time and effort and respect that goes into being a leader is frustrating and many times hurtful part of the job that goes unrecognized by the people you are trying to represent. I understand the board is in a difficult position as elected leaders in the district. I come from a place of understanding regarding the pressures that come from being a leader. I understand the board is feeling the pressure that comes from being in a position of leadership as families want their children to return to school. However, as a leader, you have to do what is best, even when it is difficult and many times when it is not easy. Returning students to in-person learning without fully planning for a return with sincere input from the associations that represent the employees and the lack of respect for the fears and concerns of the staff show both concern and disappointment with the leadership of the district. The return to in-person learning at this time is sadly not surprising. The thought that the holiday spike should be ending soon and numbers should be decreasing. However, the pandemic incidence rate and number of positives is still in the substantial stage of the state plan. And the district did put a comprehensive plan in place, and it states that when the county is in the substantial category of infection, the district would use remote learning model. To my dismay, the uncaring and thoughtless comments made by board members during the pandemic coordinator meetings are upsetting. During the December meeting, negative comments with inappropriate language in reference to teachers were overheard by board members, family member while unmuted. The comments were upsetting and inappropriate. Unfortunately, insensitive comments regarding the virus and teachers continued during the discussion yesterday at the January. One board member questioned why so many staff were infected in November when there were multiple positive COVID tests at Highland. She wanted to know why this occurred and if was because the rules were not being followed. It needed to be explained staff were quarantined for exposure and non-infection. Staff interact on a daily basis for various reasons. Special teachers come into classroom, teaching assistants work with students in classroom. Students move between multiple teachers. The implication that staff put themselves in a dangerous position is both insulting and frustrating after the time and effort that has gone into instructing our students this year. The district administration was doing its job of trying to keep teachers and students safe while instruction was going on in our schools. I would like to point out to the board the following facts. Yesterday, according to the COVID-19 tracker, more than 4,000 Americans lost their life from COVID-19, and 34,502 Americans have lost their life in 2021. I reference this information as yesterday it was also stated by a board member. I have a first grader and a fourth grader, and this is not the best form of instruction for them. This is because people are afraid. Students are being harmed because people are afraid of this virus. Yes, remote instruction isn't the best form of instruction. No staff member wants to harm students. We love our students and we would love to be with them in person learning safely. Please reference the statistics regarding the number of deaths just this year to understand why people are afraid. We don't want to die. While some members of the board don't find that to be acceptable, as the association president, I most certainly find it acceptable. We are afraid of dying or becoming seriously ill. We are afraid of both our health and the health of our family members. It is offensive to those who have been impacted by the virus to make uncaring and cruel comments, as this is just being afraid, as was stated yesterday. People are dying or becoming gravely ill, and being afraid is acceptable in this situation. I reference the board to review the picture attached to this statement of a patient with COVID-19 being placed on a ventilator. The board discussed the comparison to other local school districts and incorrectly stated that all of the other districts are back. All 500 districts in the state are going back. As was corrected in the meeting yesterday, Pittsburgh Public is continuing with remote instruction as just one example to correct this statement. Our hybrid model is one of the best in the county. If the board wants to allow other districts as justification for its decision making, does that mean they want to stop live streaming option? Many other districts do not provide this as an option to their students. If we are comparing to other districts, let's compare all aspects and not select the parts that fit our agendas. We understand the guidance from the state has been updated. Our reopening plan called for remote learning while in substantial level of spread. If we are moving forward to the hybrid model in a substantial category, all guidance should be taken into account and the plan reviewed and updated. Over the summer, meetings occurred and in-depth discussions took place to determine the return to instruction. We should take the time to create the best plan possible for our district at this time as well. Rushing the return is not acceptable for staff or students. Based on the comments by the board at the pandemic meeting, it appears rushing the reopening is occurring because we are living in fear. The severity of the virus is not taken seriously, and the decisions are being made based on leaders not being able to handle the pressure of those who want to return in-person learning. The guidance changed, so our plan should change, and that takes time. No one is saying time means months away, but it certainly can occur in a safe manner within a short time frame. District leadership in Beaver and Freedom are dealing with COVID. A staff member from Freedom died over the holiday break. The reality of this situation is a return to in-person will likely result in the death or serious illness of a staff member or a family member. I hope I don't have to address the board in the future regarding the death of a member of the Bridger family. This is one of my biggest fears. If that happens, it will be a direct result of the decisions made by the board. I know as a leader myself, I would carry that guilt of the decision for the rest of my life. Hopefully that won't need to be a statement to be read virtually at the board meeting. As was discussed by the board, being afraid isn't a reason to stop gathering in groups in person. I expect in-person board meetings will occur moving forward. The limit on the number of people allowed inside shouldn't be an excuse. That is a reason the board has stated for virtual meetings in the past. I have a suggestion moving forward for the meetings. You can have the meeting live for those who can be in attendance, staying within the number of people allowed in a room, stay 6 feet apart in mask, and live stream for those at home unable to attend in person. That is what the staff does each and every day in the hybrid model.
Dr. Pascarella, I need to stop you for a minute. That last comment, or the last statement no longer needs to be read. That was communicated to us to that.
And I think that was it. If I missed it,
Yes.
I apologize.
No, you have not missed any. And before I open it up to board comment, I'm going to start off, please. I will address some of the comments this evening, beginning with Michelle Wilson, Union President. Foremost, I cannot speak for or on behalf of my fellow board members regarding comments or opinions from yesterday or any other day. Each of us is entitled to our own opinion and comments as appointed board members. I offer you mine. You are correct in stating that it is very difficult to be in a school leadership position and make the tough choices, now more than ever. I believe each of my board colleagues is committed to making the best possible choices for our staff and students of this district, again, now more than ever. On many occasions, I have received critical or derogatory comments about the decisions of the district. This includes staff comments, but I choose to make the better choice and not react to every little criticism, as it just breeds more and more negativity and unnecessary drama. However, I do feel that after reading your statement, it was time for a proper response. First, let me be clear. I have publicly stated on numerous occasions that the administration and staff have done an amazing job in doing their best to provide a quality education during these difficult times. I still feel that way. The pandemic committee brought together administrators, board members, parents, teachers, and others. The committee welcomed all thoughts. Board members and others considered information about other local districts. This was completely appropriate. You did not attend the entire meeting. I personally do not compare my decision-making to other districts as you suggest in your letter. As far as your Pittsburgh Public Schools reference, I will ask my solicitor, Ms. Turnbull, to give us some guided information on what they are communicating for their plan, as the firm represents them as well. And I'll let her do that when I finish my statement. You are correct that the updated guidance from the PDE recommends a return to in-person learning during the second semester. PDE's guidance is the authority that every school district in the state often defers to on virtually every topic. The district, unfortunately, cannot control how often PDE changes their recommendations. It is insulting to me that you would insinuate that anyone on this board does not have the best of intentions relative to either our staff or our students. We are relentlessly committed to making this district a great place to raise our children. We too are working tirelessly to hear our people. I make choices based upon what is best for my hometown district, where I was born and raised, and where I chose to raise my children, and most importantly, for all of the children in this district. I am invested heart and soul in this district, and I will continue to speak out and rally these kids, no matter what the, after all, they are our future. You may not agree with all of our decisions, but rest assured, I will respect your choices, even if you don't agree with mine. And I will continue to support my fellow board members as we are in this together, and these are not easy choices. Thank you. And if any other board members have comments, please come forward. First of all, let Megan speak on the Pittsburgh Public Schools first.
Yeah, just as a point of information, Pittsburgh Public Schools, as of this date, has announced a phased reopening as of February 1st. February 1st is the date for staff, and February 8th is the return for students.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And before I move to other board comment, I wanted to make it clear no one is more concerned about this virus than I am. I have a child that's compromised. We have board members that have had family affected. So to insinuate that we do not care or it doesn't mean anything to us is totally inappropriate. If any other board members have comments, please come forward.
I have
I
a
do.
comment. Oh, go ahead, Valerie.
Go ahead, Denise.
No, you got it. Go.
Go ahead.
One, that last comment just threw me for a total loop. I am a teacher advocate. I support teachers, and to even insinuate that I do not disgusts me. And I am the one that has a first and a fourth grader, as the majority of this community knows. And what I said in that meeting was that our social emotional well-being of our children is also our responsibility, that we have a lot going on, that our teachers are working really hard. But if the CDC is saying that children can travel out of our state 11 years and younger and come back and not have to quarantine because they are showing that they are not transmitting it, what do we have and what leg do we have to stand on by people who are doctors and people that are learning more daily from this virus? This is a pandemic. It is new and it is day to day. And if we as educators, which I am one, don't grow and don't learn during this, shame on us. But do not ever insinuate that I do not support teachers.
Thank you, Valerie. Ms. Young?
I actually wanted to address several comments. There was a comment made And I was not a part of the December meeting because I was actually ill myself. So there was a comment made that something was inappropriately said. And I, as a board member, support all of my board member, my fellow colleagues. And I know that our president, Mrs. Fisher, would address anything that was inappropriate said. So if there was anything inappropriately said, I know she would address it. So please, if you have a comment or feel there's something, please take it to our president and address it to her. First and foremost, I do not think that's appropriate. I do not think it's something you need to say. Public comment, if you have a problem or you feel there was something was discussed, take it to our board president and I'm sure she would address it. Also, for our sports, I was not, again, part of the December meeting. I feel our children, I'm all for our teachers. I stand up and commend our teachers every day and have said this in more than one meeting. Our teachers do an amazing job. Our administrators do an amazing job. I wish our children could be back in school, but our children, our community deserve more. And we work every single day very diligently to make sure that our community is safe. So myself, our board members, our superintendent, our principals, our teachers deserve to all be safe. Our children all deserve to be safe. So if that means that they cannot be in school, then at this moment, they cannot be in school. So if that's something they don't agree with, you don't agree with as a public, that's something that you just have to deal with. It's something we have to take we have to take the repercussions for, because we're taking the time and our due diligence to make sure our community is safe. We don't want to compromise our families, and we do have to go to the store. Some of us do have to go out to go to work. That's a part of life. But we don't have to subject our children to going into the buildings at this moment in time if it's not necessary. I understand you want your children to go back to school. I would love for my daughters to go back to school. They are affected with this as well. But unfortunately, at this time, it's not possible. I'm not going to jeopardize my children's lives. I don't think we should have sports right now. I don't think they should be in the gym having basketball. My daughter is a very good athlete and she wants to do track. But track is not important. If she focuses on academics as much as she would be in track, she can get scholarships for her academics, just as much as she can for basketball, baseball, volleyball, football, or anything else. If you put that much attention into studying as you do for those academics, as you do for sports, you can get those scholarships just as well. I do not feel we need sports right now, because if you can't go into a building to study and take your time to focus with a teacher, you shouldn't be in a gym with anyone else coaching or doing any of those any type of sports. That's my own personal opinion.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Young. Anybody else? Any other board members? So we have as the point of discussion, district reopening of elementary buildings, grades K through 5, and special education and English language learners in all buildings, effective per the Pennsylvania Department of Education recommendation. Do I have any other board feedback? We would need a motion on the floor if we were going to vote tonight, correct, Ms. Turnbull?
I'm nodding my head. Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Now, do we have a date, Kathy, in mind, or is that something that's?
So something we discussed yesterday at the pandemic coordinator meeting. Well, actually, I had brought up a date as February 1st in trying to maybe gather some time for staff to prepare and parents to prepare a return to school. That was just a suggestion of mine. And anybody could comment on that. And of course, all of this can be subject to change if there's an increase in cases, athletics, so on and so forth. Correct, Ms. Turnbull, if the situation is critical and worse, we can change.
You can. I mean, I think as another backup, I mean, the board has granted through a resolution earlier this year, Dr. Pascarella, some pretty broad powers relative to school safety and closures would be under that umbrella. Should he decide, even in the interim outside of our public meetings, that was necessary and appropriate under the circumstances.
So then also Kathy, if just some
Sure.
questions.
Sure.
So would we allow our teachers in early to get their classrooms prepared?
So, and I only threw that date out there. If somebody has another date, board member wise, that you are thinking, please throw it out there. If if you have it, I would think, and that's just my personal opinion, I'm not anybody else's opinion, that we would need to let staff in earlier to prepare their classrooms. But that is just my personal opinion, not,
And then
I'm
now,
just.
in that same regard, will we have to put something out to our parents to find out whether or not they will attend virtually
Yes.
or attend in person?
Yes, I think that would be an excellent idea.
One comment on that, Ms. Fisher. I mean,
Sure.
Just about needing to find that out. I mean, we know that, yes, that, it might be something quick that we can't assume that everybody is going to continue like they did when we left, whether it would be online. You know that everybody does have it. If this is your decision, has a garnet and gray day. So we would probably, we can make an assumption, but to Mr. Campbell's point, it would probably be wise that we try to reach back out and figure out who we're supposed to be expecting, because, by the end of the last, time the students were in the building, many were choosing the online option at that point. So
I do got one question. If we are going to wait on that and we're going to do stuff like that, is there a way to get these teachers back in their classrooms to get more material? If we're going to be still online and we're still going to do this until we get results and stuff back, is there a way to get these guys more material that they might need, or run off copies, or do stuff like that to help these people out?
And I know, as reading in some of these comments, I did have another board member bring up yesterday in the pandemic meeting about copies, and she had previously mentioned that to me before, but there were a few comments in there tonight that said the same thing. So I would agree, Dr. Pascarella, that we would need to make some sort of arrangements to get copies to these families that need them. And I don't know what that plan would be, but it's something that we have to look at, regardless whether we are going to reopen, at a sooner date or a later date. I think it seems to be an issue for our families in the district, some of them.
And Kathy, I thought we talked at the pandemic committee about just following the PDE guideline with the second semester.
We did.
I had that written with the 25th of January.
We did. And I'll just clarify, and I've stated it publicly before, that I would be following, in my opinion, PDE recommended guidelines. That's what I've said from the beginning. And I just feel that's something that I will continue to do. We've tried to do that through this whole pandemic, and I will continue to support that. No choice is easy, and I'm
so
just
to answer that question, I would just say, I mean, I've made my recommendation to the board. If the board decides whatever you decide, that's what it will be. And if it's that you want teachers in there sooner, if that's the way the vote goes, then that's what it would be, to hand out materials or to bring back. That's kind of your call. The reason why we were doing some things that we were doing, and it didn't apply to everybody, but because of safety. I mean, let's just, we had lunch. We had the lunch being able to be handed out and delivered. And I thank the cafeteria staff who was willing to do that and to make sure our community and our students who needed that got that. And, if technology breaks occurred or something, we use that as the platform to get materials out. And if there were specific materials, sometimes we were looking at possibly trying to get that out. But yeah, that is a direction of the board, that you want a handout, the handout of materials prior to whatever you decide, and that's where the votes go. We will do our best to do that when you tell us you want that done.
Well, Bill, I think you're asking for them to get in as soon as possible, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Well, yeah, because if you see all those comments, I mean, people need printouts, and if we could get those to them, which could help the students better, that would be great. Just like they got their material, they had a schedule at some point. This teacher came in, got what she needed next, so forth. I just thought if we could do something in the meantime to get some material to these kids that might need it.
Well, and I think the union president just told us that they are safe when they're there following all the protocols. So I think from her letter to us, she even says that they can follow all those guidelines.
And I'll just clarify, I actually did have a call, some calls from a few other staff members that are on the opposite side of the spectrum that do want to return to class, and that opinion is not of all of the union representation.
Well, if say we go back February 1st, between now and then, can the committee get together and go over the plan to make sure that everybody is going to be safe? The teachers, the administration, the students, and that gives us time to find out exactly how many students will be in school every day versus the ones that are going to be virtual. And once a parent says, I want my kids to stay virtual, they're virtual for the full 9 weeks. We can't have kids going back and forth to throw off our numbers, because that's when things are going to go awry.
So just a comment from the beginning of the year. We allow parents at any given time. Right now, you can obviously weigh in and change that, but we allow parents to change from online and in person basically whenever they wanted, to allow them that freedom and to have that choice for a variety of reasons. They just needed to notify. So I'm not making that difficult. I just want to make sure that it's clear that that's what we've been allowing everyone to do at this point. And so really, I mean, if you look at the way we implemented the plan at the beginning of the year, it does allow for physical spacing if everybody came Garnet and everybody came Gray, to the best of our ability in almost every location. I don't want to say every, we'd have to move, but almost every location. It allowed for that. Now, did everyone come? No. And did some people come more on sometimes than others? Yes. Did they see cases go up and maybe decide to not come as much? Yes. Were they not feeling well, maybe themselves, and made the decision as per the feedback to not come themselves? Yes. I think that's important, that my recommendation to you, in addition to what I had said previously about, waiting at this given point, is also that if you do open up whole thing, I would encourage you to still allow folks to be flexible, because if they aren't feeling well, I think it would be best that they get their instruction, if they're able to do that, without having to say, well, you only get to come in or you don't come in. That would be my one recommendation. And as far as meeting with the committee, we surely can meet with the committee and discuss any concerns and try to lay things out. But at the end of the day, I have to say that, if the board directs us to start on a day, we'll do our best, like we've done before, which I think we've done a pretty good job of. And credit to everybody on the committee and everybody in our district. But then we're going to start when you tell us to start. I mean,
Ms. Turnbull, could you elaborate a little bit on, would we need to change our reopening plan? I know that was mentioned in the union president's letter. If a decision is made this evening.
Yeah, I think there would be, I think we'd have to just go back and make sure that that document, which is kind of just the blueprint, in fact, is matching. I believe that she's correct, that there were adjustments made about 2 months ago when we went into the current all virtual. So that's an action that will necessarily flow from the board decision. I think the overarching pieces that I'm hearing at least would be whether or not at this time the board wishes to direct the reopening and a date, and likely a direction or a request back to the administration and the committee to kind of work through, to the best of their ability, some of the details associated with that, and update the plan accordingly.
Sure. Any other board feedback?
Mary Jo, do you have anything? Mary Jo.
Kath, what is so if I look at this, we're only looking at
Hey, I
grades
know you can't have the plug in my phone.
K through 5.
That was the PDE recommendation, of course.
Okay, so then will we stay virtual with our other students or go into the hybrid model?
That is up to us as a board to decide what action we want to take. The recommendation from the PDE is exactly what's listed, grades K through 5 and special education English language learners in all buildings, effective per the PDE. That is their recommendation. We can choose to make changes as we see fit. And again, the date I threw out in the meeting was just a date that I threw out there. I moved further ahead to try to give families time to plan and staff and so on and so forth. But I only suggested that is just a suggestion. Anybody else on the board can throw.
I think February 1 is probably the better date.
Okay.
I agree with that date.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what date was that?
February 1st.
Okay.
Kathy,
Go
I
ahead.
have a
Ms.
couple
Kehoe.
comments I'd like to make.
Sure.
Okay, first of all, I am the board member that had a family member that did pass away from COVID-19. But I am willing to go with the recommendation from PDE on a February 25th, the start of the second semester. I mean, that's,
You mean January
that's more than
25th?
10 days away. I think that's plenty of time to turn around and sit down and have some discussions. And as far as the plan goes, the basic parts of the plan are already in place as far as cleaning, mask, temperature checks, the whole scenario that goes with that. But a lot of the comments that were made, I think, for me, it's weighing the parts of it. There is the staff, but there's also the education of the children. And I think there has to be a happy medium here. I'm all for going back on a hybrid model. I'm not saying jump in 5 days a week. I think you need to be in a hybrid model to kind of wait and see how the rest of it plays out. But that's my comment. I would go for February 25th and it would be a hybrid model.
Do you mean January 20, the start of the?
I'm not sure about the middle school or the high school at this point in time.
Dr. Pasquarello, am I incorrect? Was
It's January 25th. I think that's what Mrs. Kehoe means. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
I just think she might have trouble hearing you when you asked her.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that with us,
was
Mrs. Kehoe.
The recommendation was the second, you're right, from PDE, not mine, but PDE.
Right.
Hey,
5th
Kath,
of January or the second semester, right?
Okay. Yes, Mr. Metz.
I just wanted to go back and, reiterate, they were talking about us not taking this pandemic serious and all that stuff. I'm the other board member that also lost four members of
Yes.
the family to this. So it does weigh heavy on my shoulders on
Yes.
which way to turn. So, I mean, this is a tough time, and I'm sorry to Miss Kehoe for your loss, but it's a rough thing to try to juggle right now. So it does weigh heavy. So for that insinuation that, you're not really, about the pandemic, it does. It weighs heavy on me. So
Yes, it does. Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Metz. Any other board member feedback before we need to come to some point of determination?
I think the one thing, Kathy, that we have to think about too is PDE is making a guideline and giving a recommendation and
Right.
putting it out there for us. However, there is always a however in there, that they're putting in groups and subgroups of people that cost a lot of money.
Mhm.
Therefore, I think when a strong recommendation comes out, we're putting ourselves more liable as a district if we do not bring our special ed and our ESL population back, that we would owe compensatory ed, that we would owe these different things that our district is not financially prepared to do. And while I also think it is what's best for our students, and I do applaud the beginning of the committee who set this up, like our hybrid schedule works. These class sizes are balanced. Our principals and our teachers have worked really hard to have this game plan that they can successfully do this and be socially distanced. That I am not putting people at risk by doing this. I think we are putting more people at risk by keeping our children at home and not worrying about their social emotional well-being, about not looking at the special education students that cannot learn at all this way. And what are we doing to help those children?
Thank you for that, Mrs. Manganello. And thank you to everybody that's been commenting on the board. I think it's important for the public and staff and students in the community to see, number one, that we are real people, that we are affected by all of this. And these are certainly not easy decisions. And I am a big advocate for teachers. I have always been a big advocate for teachers. I've been involved in this district 14 years, as many of you have as well, in different aspects. And we have nothing but love and care for the kids and our staff. So just the insinuation that that is not the case burns me. I'll be honest, it burns me. And I don't like to get in the middle of drama, and I prefer not to. But I felt it was appropriate just to speak upon it tonight because, you know, we have really good people on this board that are working very hard to bring what we can to the district as we do in administration and staff and so on and so forth. So thank you all. Does anybody else on the board have, I haven't heard from anybody. Is there anybody else that wishes to?
I have a
Go ahead.
question for Joe. Joe?
Yes.
So, if we choose to go back to in-person learning, would we give our teachers like an Act 80 type of a day to get prepared so that they're not trying to teach while still trying to get prepared? Or is that something we could do? An Act 80 may not even be the real day that I'm thinking of.
Well, as far as preparation, you know, for their rooms, one thing I will tell you, and you might remember this from the beginning of the school year too. I just, not that that's not important to what you're referring to, but
Right.
I also caution, I know people would do social distancing, but even getting to years and, you know, going to those kind of things, my only concern about giving any major amount of time is, you know, we just got to make sure that we don't end up having to quarantine large members of the staff when we're planning on opening up. You know, right out
Well, I
the
don't
gate.
think we would, I mean, I wouldn't think we would have that problem. I think that our teachers are responsible enough to take that upon themselves for sure. You know what I mean?
Sure. So to answer your question, if you wanted to do some type of, you know, delayed start or something on one day where they do virtual instruction, for example, if you set a Friday before the Monday that you start, you know, may have time already, depending on when you pick, you could, or we could look at another time to add a 2-hour delay. We just have to watch our instructional hours that we have when we do that to make sure we meet the instructional hours for the children too.
Okay.
So I mean, we could look at that if that is a, you know, a major issue.
Well, I think that would make the transition a lot easier for teachers though. You know what I mean? If we chose to go back in there, you know, for them not to be.
You could just do something where you would say that on a given day, if this is your decision and you wanted to give them some time, you would just put something out that says, hey, on this date and time, they're going to be working from their classrooms, and they're either going to give assignments to end out the day or something like that people could work on. And then they would have the remainder or the balance of their day to do exactly what you said before they came back. If that was something the board wanted, us to look into, we could do that.
Okay.
I mean, that could be something that the committee comes up with, part of the plan in getting back into the school, to make sure the teachers are ready, the classrooms are ready, and everything's set to go for whenever the kids would show up on February 1st.
I think some of us, though, Kitty, are saying that we could get back on January 25th at the beginning of the semester. And I mean, our teachers are prepared. They're teaching every day. It's not like they need to prep for a beginning of a school year. They're in their year. They're working every single day. They're ready for the kids. I don't know what prep other than like during their prep periods that we would really need to give them to transition. We transitioned one day from being hybrid to being fully remote, and we didn't call an Act 80 day and say, hey, we need more time for this. That's where they have proven time and time again that they're beyond professionals and that they're doing their job on a regular basis. I don't really, and I would be curious to find out if anybody else is changing their school calendar to give additional time to transition back and forth. And that's probably even why PDE is recommending the semester, because most schools have a little clerical time at the end of a semester built into them.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense to me. I'm not, the use of an Act 88 day, I don't understand, because we should be teaching now. And so all we need to do is, and when we were in hybrid model, our teacher colleagues were using their laptops to be able to interact with the children that were at home. So I guess I am confused about it. I think the decision needs to be made. If there's some sort of extraordinary thing that we're not thinking of at this moment, then maybe that's a different conversation for the committee. But I'm not quite connecting, and maybe it's just me, but I'm not quite connecting why we would need transition time for planning.
Dr. Pascarella, do you have any thoughts on that you think that would be a need? Or
I mean, my comment to that really would be, I guess my first comment unrelated to that would be that I think, custodians and stuff, we have maintenance coming in, but I think custodians, if you make this vote, start a little earlier than teachers. I want to just throw that onto the table and for you to make sure that they come in just a little bit earlier. Our buildings have been sanitized and everything like that, but it wouldn't hurt for them to come in and make sure the buildings are prepared. As far as the teachers go, I've kind of said my point. I think they are capable of prepared to come in there. Would they always, enjoy time to plan and prep because they're missing so much of that? I mean, I think so, but do I think that they could not transition? I mean, that'd be something we would ask them, I guess, if that was something. I was just trying to answer the question asked of me, but I don't know that it's a necessity for them to be able to do that. I go back to my point to just saying that, we're trying to do some collaboration efforts, and there's going to be some time for them to meet. It's virtual PD and stuff in the next couple of weeks. But so to answer your question, would it hurt, or would some would some teachers appreciate that? Sure. I think it's a necessity. I don't think it's a necessity. I think they would, as others have said, they're professionals and they would step up. So I hope, I'm not trying to dodge your question, but I could see benefits on both sides of that, but I don't think it would absolutely be necessary for us to be successful. I don't.
Okay.
And we already have multiple 2-hour delays and early dismissals coming up in our children's schedules. So the 22nd, the 29th, at least in elementary. Those are
Yeah,
days
those
that we have, and I know that they're normal professional development times for them, but to add more time off for our kids, I can't be in favor of losing one more minute for our children that they're behind. And I know every child in the US and in the world is behind because of the pandemic, so they're not technically behind. But they're behind where we all normally look at our children to be right now. So I personally can't be in favor of any more time.
Okay. Any other board member feedback? Ms. Turnbull, do you have anything you want to add to this situation?
No, that I think the legal components, you have the authority to take an action to direct something. I think I have confidence that you understand what PDE's recommendations are right now, what the committee's recommendations are, and what the administration's recommendations are, and you're weighing all of those appropriately. So,
and your recommendation for us as a district would be to, as far as if we decide to resume in-person learning, to follow the guidelines as far as the procedures from the PDE.
I mean, as we stand here right now, yes, and that's always with the understanding.
And I'm speaking of cleaning and everything we've done in the past up to this point.
Cool. Absolutely, all of those different components. And Dr. Pascarello did review with us this evening in his PowerPoint. I mean, that there's the opening, and then there's the what happens afterwards. And the what happens afterwards, we have less control over. But what we do, I mean, there are obligations or recommendations that go along with closures and continuing safety concerns once that threshold is met. So it, again, I think the board continues to approach each of these decisions and in sequence. And so the first is the reopening, and then at some point you'll be deciding if it becomes unwieldy or unbearable to follow those closures for small and medium-sized buildings. I would imagine that there would be a future discussion about that, but the starting point, I do believe, would be consistent with following the PDE recommendations.
Okay, any other board feedback?
So I do. I see that we had 2 comments in the chat, but I mean, I understand we can't give the teachers a whole entire day, but it didn't take them, they weren't given a day to take their stuff out, but they did have enough time. I mean, virtually they did have time to take their stuff home. Our kids had to get their stuff taken home. We virtually had their computers and things. Teachers have to accommodate to get their stuff at home to learn how to teach our students as well, our children. I'm speaking as a parent, not just as a board director. They have to be able to get their things back into the classroom to teach our kids. So I think, I mean, I understand. Like I said, I'm speaking as a parent right now. I think our teachers need to be able to get their things back into the classroom. I'm not saying give them a whole day or even a half a day, but give them enough time to get the things back into the classroom to help them accommodate to teach our kids. They've taken things home to teach our kids at home. They've taken the tools home necessary to teach our kids. I think they need to be able to take the tools they've had at home back into the classrooms.
So just in hearing a little bit and correct me if I'm wrong, would it be out of context to end the school day a few hours earlier? And Mr. Hall, please jump in here if I'm inappropriately making a comment that's not acceptable union wise. Could it be a possibility
that the administration would speak to the various unions potentially affected, and if the direction from the board is to adjust the calendar in some way, we would do that in a collaborative manner between district needs and acknowledging teacher demands as well.
Thank you.
So that wouldn't be something that I would necessarily suggest that we legislate at this moment, but I think take that direction and move it.
What
over.
about a voluntary, if we opened up the buildings, and these are just, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, voluntary on the Saturday before beginning or whatever, if somebody wanted to come in and take things to their classroom, is that
the administration decide that part? Because I think the board doesn't.
Would that be, I'm just asking, Ms. Turnbull, would that be inappropriate if that were?
I think that I'm sure that there are various ways to accommodate teachers who would need or want or would prefer early access.
Okay.
And in doing so, again, I think Dr. Pasquarella could certainly coordinate that.
Okay.
And is taking copious notes, I'm sure, throughout this conversation about some of these issues, and we'll weigh those and try to implement them to the best of his ability.
Okay. So what we have before us and what has been suggested are start dates of January 25th and February 1st. Does anybody have a different date they want to throw in there, or are those two dates that we are looking at to consider? And we also need to look at the recommendation from the PDE on the elementary buildings, K through 5, and special education and English language learners in all buildings. We would need a motion. I said this earlier.
So can we make it a motion to vote then now?
We can.
Okay, so can I make a motion to have all K through 5 students, special ed and ESL students, K to 12, return to school on January 25th?
I will second that.
Do I have a so moved? And I have a second.
What? Why? So we don't have the language of the hybrid model in here.
Oh, sorry. I would like to make a motion to have K-5 students, special education and ESL students return on a hybrid basis on January 25th.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Turnbull, should we include both dates in there as far as voting purposes in case a board member is in favor of one and not the other? I'm just asking for your advice on how to.
I think as a procedural matter, I think it's cleanest to do one at a time.
Okay.
And take each motion, if the first motion with the date as presented as January 25th, if that fails for a want of a majority, then it would be appropriate for someone to make another motion, and we would vote,
okay,
take that up or down. And I'm sure and the implicit part, I'm sure in the motion and the second was that this is that the committee would implement the specifics for that reopening. Is that
yes.
fair? Okay.
Yes, that's fair.
Just for clarity purposes.
That's
Thank
fair.
you.
And parents will still have the choice if they want to remain fully remote.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's incorporated in the legislation either.
Do we need to include that in the motion or no?
I think what we're doing here is kind of updating the one portion of our
plan,
safety plan and our reopening
Got
plan.
it.
The remaining,
Okay.
let's assume for our purposes in voting that all the other remaining portions of the existing plan, be it those other options, facilities, those other components will remain intact at this time.
Okay.
You want me to add that in there, Megan, like with all learning models remaining?
It's certainly up to you. I mean, for me, I just want to make sure that everyone understands the motion clearly that's on the floor. You can certainly restate it to include those components.
Do you want me
Go
to
ahead,
restate
Denise,
that,
just to-
Kathy?
Yes, please, just to make it clear.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to have all K-5 students, special education, and ES K-12 students return to school on a hybrid method on January 25th, with all learning models still being an option for family members.
Thank you. Do I have a so moved?
I'll second it.
Second? Megan, is that enough to roll call, correct? Okay.
Correct.
June?
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
No.
Miss Pedigo,
Yes.
Miss Young,
No.
Mrs. Fisher,
I would prefer the start date of February 1st, but if that's the consensus of the board, I will go with yes.
motion carries.
Okay. Any other comments before we move forward?
I do
Pardon me,
have
go-
a comment, please.
Go ahead.
The other part, if you remember from my PowerPoint, that I need to know this because it will be important. is-
Sure.
And I didn't want to add another thing to that motion. I think that was pretty, clear. But are you going to continue to follow the recommendation that says, as you saw in that chart for the size of the buildings, that if we get those, number of cases, we would shut down for that amount of time?
Joe, I
And it's-
thought we don't have that option even. I thought when you and Kathy signed that, whatever the attestation form, however you say that word, that we have to follow those guidelines. Like we don't have a choice as long as we're in substantial.
If that's how, we read that and view that from the solicitors, I mean, you also hear a lot about local control, so I'm just making sure, obviously I will tell you that I will call Kathy if I feel it's whatever time at night and we're not going to be able to contact Trace and say, hey, we got to go out for a day till we get this done. I'll be the one to take the heat for that, no problem. But I do want to make sure in general, I defer to the solicitor then. I still thought a lot of this came down to recommendations and local control. I understand there was an attestation which we signed, which says we're going to keep people, you're going to have kids in there and such that they'd be 6 feet apart and masked. Basically saying that you will do the hybrid model in our plan. The change in our plan is going to be now that where it says substantial all virtual, we're going to change that. We're going to have to meet and to change that. So I defer to the solicitor because I tended to agree with what you just said, but I'm not 100% sure when they say local control that, and I want clarification from the board. That's
Megan?
Let me re-examine that specific provision and confirm that that is mandatory and in order in terms of the nature of those PDE requirements. I can do that very, very quickly and get that feedback to both Dr. Pascarella and to the board, and so that even when we have our meeting next week, if there is a motion that is necessary or board consideration that's necessary, I can advise and we can adjust the agenda accordingly so that prior to the opening of any buildings, we have that as a clear and defined understanding and issue.
so if it is mandated, then there is no motion necessary. You
Correct.
know that. If not, then I
Okay.
think the board needs to have a motion next week that says whether or not they want to follow that or not. Because I need,
Very good.
obviously I need to know that.
Ms. Fisher, got a question for you. Now,
Yes.
since that is like the 22nd of January. So going forward, are we going to start having board meetings in person in the auditorium?
I'll consult with our solicitor.
I was just wondering. I just was wondering. That's all.
I'll consult with our, go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I mean, so we've had different as the last several months have gone by, we've had different standards in different months. I mean, last month there was a for the last 2 months, an indoor capacity of no more than 10 people. That certainly would not have been workable even for our board at its current size. Right. So, and I think right now the indoor capacity of a room is 10%. So we will
I was
certainly,
just asking.
yeah, we'll take a look at it. It's a matter both of there's various things that we as a board and those like me who assist kind of take a look at. We want to make sure that that public participation is not stifled. I'm really sensitive to that in the Sunshine Law and those implications. So we have to look at the spaces available, the opportunities for social distancing, and then also consider that us bringing the board bringing more people into those buildings, even for the great civic purpose of a public meeting, does puts different pressures on on the cleaning staff, on those facilities, and those are places we're also trying to protect. So I think we'll keep on looking at it. I'll interface with President Fisher and Dr. Pascarella, and if any members of the board have additional feedback or thoughts, please funnel it to one of the three of us, and we'll certainly take that seriously and take that into account in any decision making that goes along with it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else before we move forward?
The last thing, and I don't want to belabor it, and it doesn't have to make sure that I'm clear. Are you saying I missed the point as to whether or not we were supposed to try to adjust the schedule?
We have an early dismissal. Do we have an early dismissal on the 22nd, Joe?
Yes, we've given them an agenda already for both the 15th and the 22nd, but if you want us to change the agenda and give them time to do that, allow them to come into the building.
What is on the agenda for the 22nd?
So there's some continuation from our goals that we set from the very beginning of the summer, and some professional development being provided to our staff, along with both department and grade level collaboration that they had asked for from those committees to talk about and share good, strong strategies and best practices. So we have that scheduled at this point and out. But I mean, if you're saying to find a way to try to reduce some of that, I mean, the schedule has already been out to allow them to come in to do that. I just don't want to this being a public meeting and me to miss a directive from you and it not be done. So, I mean, that's clarified. If you'd like me to change something, we could.
Board, does anybody have any feedback on that as far as what's presented forth to us about giving time?
I hate the thought of professional.
I think at this point, it would be best for Joe just to talk with the different unions, whatever involved, and see what they feel their needs are, and then we can make a final decision next Wednesday.
Okay, well, it's good for me. Anybody else have comment on that?
No, that's good for me.
That works.
Works for me.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just have, one other thing. Are we going to bring, I would think that if you're going to do the 25th, or bringing in of the additional custodial staff and any other staff, I'm assuming you would want that to take place days ahead of time?
I say yes, but I'll let the rest defer to the rest of the board.
Absolutely.
I would agree.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry. But
Anybody else before we move forward? Nope. Okay. Moving forward to legislative action for this meeting, education and technology, Mrs. Manganello.
Sorry, I just needed to move the screen.
We've actually,
I'm like, you read it. Do I need to?
we've actually addressed with the motion.
Nothing at this time.
Nothing at this time. Moving forward to athletics, Mr. Campbell.
Point of discussion, athletic and extracurricular health and safety plan review of spectators, mask requirements, and youth sports.
Okay, some questions on the table that I have heard from the community. Are we allowing fans? Will we be permitting fans in for these events? That is something that's on the table. Spectators, mask requirements, and we discussed youth sports in the past. That's another point of discussion here.
I think we also need to discuss the start of games. If I'm not mistaken, I think the junior high has a game tomorrow scheduled.
Is Addie on this evening? Mrs. Lucatorto?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Could you
I'm
give
sorry.
us a
I'm in
little
the
update?
Yeah, I'm in the building, so I have a mask on. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Okay. Sure. Yes, we can.
Okay, so yes, we need to talk about mask. I can give you an update on that. Yes, we do have competitions scheduled for this week if we're approved to move forward. I do have information on capacity if you want to discuss having spectators at the game. Youth sport, we have not yet cleared any youth sport groups to come into the building. We had youth sport at baseball this year. The other thing you may want to consider is out of season sports returning to having open gyms and that type of thing. So those are the 3 or the 4 things, 5 things that I have on my list. So
Patty, do you want to just
Sure.
talk about what others you have talked to, at least in our conference, about masks?
Yep. So the mask, we have information from the MAC conference and information from the Southwest conference. The MAC principals are keeping track of that. In general, schools that are not requiring their masks for their student athletes who are actually playing in the game, if in order to play the game, they will wear masks if we require it, either in our facility or as our opponents do it. So all of the schools have pretty much said, like if I would want to go, we would want to go to Blackhawk, for example. If we are requiring masks for our student athletes, they will have their student athletes also wear them during play. So everyone would be in masks in order to get the game played. So there's nobody at this time that we would be playing who would say, we're not wearing masks, tough crap. So we do have that kind of back and forth. And all we have to do is provide our policy. I have a policy, written up, ready to go, following what you guys have already said about wearing masks all the time, that I will send to our opponents.
Okay. What about spectators and other and our opponents? Have you had any feedback from other districts?
Did you say fans? Sorry, Mrs. Fisher.
Yes, spectators. Yes, I did.
Yep. So also on the same, with the MAC and the Southwest Conference, currently the ones that we're playing in section and basketball games, only Montour is allowing visiting fans at this point. Most of it is due to capacity. For example, in our capacity in the, we're at 10% capacity. So the senior high gym the number is 1,810. So that would only allow 181 people. And the field house capacity is 1,700. So it would only allow 170 people. So by the time we account for everyone, much like we did with football and soccer and all that kind of stuff that we did in the fall, we would have room for approximately 111 people, probably parents at this point, for the girls basketball in the high school gym. And we would have a room for 104 in the, I'm sorry, it's 139 total if there's no JV game. For the girls, it's 111 if there is a JV game, and we have to count for the JV teams on both sides.
Okay.
And on the boys basketball side, they would have room for 76 additional people after we count for cheer and everyone else. If there's no JV game, that number becomes 104. So we have, so with basketball, we'd have approximately 32 participants that would maybe want tickets for their parents. And on the girls' side, I'm in school. Sorry, there's 14. There would be 14 student athletes that we would want to maybe let their children or their parents come watch them play. In the fall, if everybody remembers, we were outside. We had more ability to do things. I think we were doing 4 for our home team and 2 for visiting teams when we finished. We were less than that for volleyball. We were 2-2 because it was inside. I don't think at this point we can have visitors. We have the live stream ready to go, and we're ready to go with that. And we'll put, we have our live stream calendar up on the webpage, the athletics webpage that anybody can go to and go to that. So I don't know what you want to do with that, but that's where we are. As far as current game schedule, right now the bowling is scheduled to play tomorrow. And bowling per league is league rule. There are no spectators until the end of January. We have middle school basketball getting set to go to Avonworth tomorrow if approved to go. And they are not having visitors, or very few schools are even having home parents for middle school basketball. On the girls and boys basketball side, the varsity side, the girls right now are scheduled to play on Monday here at home versus QV. And the boys are scheduled to play on Tuesday, the 19th versus QV. The other thing that we would be doing is we'd be bringing the field house back online because we can't fit everybody in here once we start games. And so the boys will move their first practice on Monday, the first of next week. They would go over to the field house to bring that online. Currently, with nobody in the building here, we're able to have mats behind me in the high school lobby. That's where cheer practice is. We have the basketball court. We have 3 teams cycling through with a 30-minute buffer in between for cleaning and to not meet each other. We have wrestling. We have mats out in the lower lobby next to the superintendent's office because our wrestling room is so small. So we're cycling all the teams right now through this building. And that was the plan to do that for this week and next week. What other questions can I answer for you?
Board members, any questions on anything Addie's presented so far?
So Addie, have you been approached? We've done a lot of winter league type things and whatnot. I realize that probably would fall maybe under youth sports because I know that there's a lot of younger teams that are involved in that. Are any of those going on or asked to be going on?
We have had one request to play youth sport here.
Okay.
Checking in with the Southwest Conference and the MAC Conference. I don't know of anybody, and we could have had people missing from the last couple of meetings, but I don't know anyone who's allowing youth sport inside at this point because we're having to expand things. I mean, we're fortunate. We have 2 gyms. We're blessed in that way. But other folks with expanding for cleaning time and buffers, it's very hard to then get children in after us into the building.
Okay.
Time-wise, it's just a crush.
Very
so we do have some questions from obviously the spring sport coaches are anxious to get started. I've asked them to hold until the 25th in order that we could get basketball off the ground, and then maybe we can find a way to get them in the spaces as well, if that's okay with you guys.
Okay.
Okay, comments, suggestions, questions? We will have to address spectators at this point because games will be starting here shortly. So I need some feedback.
What? My opinion is we need to at least allow parents to get in. And then, I mean, I think that would cover off on the boys' side because of the cheerleaders, the number of cheerleaders with the number of boys. So that would take care of that entire number of 76 is what it really sounds like.
Yes,
The girls' game, I mean, you know, I think we should let as many people as we can inside that gym. I mean, there's only 14 girls, you know, as long as their parents got in, that would be 28, but there's 111. Is that accurate, Addie?
Yeah, I think we have 12 on the roster right now for girls basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be 24 parents, or you could expand that to allow more if you wanted to do that. There are 5 seniors on the team. I checked that before we came on. Maybe you want to expand the seniors so they can have more folks there.
Right. Even if we do that, sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'll
could do
speak on
something like
that. I'm really for letting parents in, but limiting it at this point until we get to get some further indication on how things are going to go as far as COVID. But I don't think it's and that's just my opinion, and we'll take everybody's opinion. But I don't think it's unreasonable, down the road to consider the senior parents, to say, well, we're giving 2 tickets for parents and maybe up and get to 4 for senior kids. But my thoughts right now are, I think, limiting it to just parents as we're trying to keep as many people out of the building to keep things safe. That's my opinion, but please, the rest of the board, if you would weigh in.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
We just found out today that Freedom Wrestling had to shut down their program, and it's primarily because there's parents who are positive. So I would encourage us to consider keeping our community as safe as possible.
Okay.
By keeping folks in our community separate for people from other folks.
Oh, I
their
agree.
communities.
I
So-
don't think I will be stating that I don't think we should be allowing visiting fans in. And
No, I agree with that, Kath. Yeah, it should just be our.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, our
we
people
need
and
to
our.
keep-
I just
we need
wanted
to
to
keep
make
our
sure.
people safe as we can. Board feedback and anybody else?
I agree completely. Our community only right now.
I agree with that too, Kathy.
Thank you.
Same here.
So then we will need a motion, but we should address youth sports at this point. I don't want to exclude that. Addie, do you have anything you want to add to that as far as discussion?
I think again, as much as youth sport is important and we'd love to help them, I think that our spring sports lost their season last year. And so if you were asking me where to use our resource of time right now, I would say the resource of time I would love to give to the baseball team and to the softball team, if we're allowed to do that, the track team, because time is the biggest resource that we have.
Sure.
And I would love to give that resource to those children and those student athletes who lost their season last year to be able to spend time with their coaches. I would love to have open gym for our volleyball team, who's been an amazing team in the past. So that's my opinion if you're asking me.
I am, and I will agree with your opinion on my personal opinion, and I'll throw it out to the rest of the board here to put their 2 cents in.
No, I
And-
think that's fine. I mean,
Yeah, I think we need to keep the youth sports out.
Yeah, when it's safe again, we will obviously revisit adding, youth sports, but I just want to make sure everybody has their say. So we're going to have to vote on this. At least Ms. Turnbull.
Unmute. Okay, unmute.
Sorry.
No, yeah. So what I hear from the board right now is there are a series of different specific topics relating to athletics that Dr. Pascal and the administration would like some clear direction regarding, and that is to start if it is the board's wish, an action to confirm that competitions and inter-school competitions can begin. Some masking is another. So that's probably one motion. I would imagine that, and I think it's probably easier to do those in sequence too. Again,
In sequence. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
competition, masking of athletes, spectators, and well, those definite 3, and then you can tell.
So we would need 3 at least.
Yeah, I think so.
They need to be separate. Okay. So board.
Kathy, on the masking,
Yes.
or Addie, can you help out? I'm going back. You can tell what my practice is of wrestling. Are we excluding wrestling during matches of wearing the mask and going with the WIPIO and the PIAA guidelines for
Correct.
masking during tournament there?
Correct. So
Okay.
a couple things with wrestling is at this point we're trying to stay away from large multi-team
Right.
stuff. We might do 2 schools with limited numbers. We're also saying both in practice and in competition, when you're in the act of sparring, or one-on-one wrestling, you do not mask during that time because of the danger of twisting the mask, or especially with the using the gaiters a lot, it'd be around their necks. So when they spar, and I've been again up and down the stairs and watching wrestling practice, and the kids have been doing great, and the coaches as well.
So do you, I'm sorry. I wondered how many kids are participating in wrestling, Addie.
Okay, right now we have one who's wrestling at the high school level. We have to certify the weights by the 14th. He will be wrestling our section and be our team score, and we look forward to watching him wrestle. On the junior high side, right now, we are able to wrestle junior high. We have about 10 student athletes in and out with wrestling. And at this point, we will take the opportunity to hold ninth graders at the junior high level, which generally we don't do, in order to give them more opportunities to compete at an adequate competition level. So we have about 10 kids who are wrestling at the junior high level, and we're looking to get them like 4 to 5 competitions. So they do get to compete this fall or this winter, excuse me, and working with Coach Wilson and Wilson to make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
So Megan, do we need to make a motion then for the mask following the WIPIO guidelines then of, like, how would we make that with wrestling?
I think, so you might want to consider a motion authorizing or directing student athletes and visiting athletes to mask during competition, with the exception of wrestling, which would follow WIPIO recommendations or requirements.
Ms. Fisher?
Does that get us there, Addie?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, that's fine.
Got a question for you. Didn't we bring about the mask requirements up in the December meeting and say that it was mandatory no matter what to be able to play in January? That was already discussed about the masking requirements?
We did, but I think we are adding the concept of competition now. So the question is, do they play on the court with them?
Well, I thought we did say that because mainly everybody in like basketball was wearing them at all the schools playing and stuff like that. I thought that was the discussion back in December.
Megan, we may have to make that universal as far as the winter sports then in the motion.
I think that would be the most equitable and probably fair and direct way to handle that.
Okay.
It seems like what you just said, Mrs. Turnbull, and Mr. Metz, yes, I think that was discussed, but we knew we wouldn't have a competition until then, and we wanted to make sure that all the other people, although assumed would wear their mask if they played us, was accurate, and Addie followed up. So I think this is a follow-up. So if I'm hearing you right, Mrs. Turnbull, right, and if I'm hearing the board, you guys jump in. I think what you're saying is that we're going to continue to go ahead and go into competitive sports in both practice and competition for every sport except for during competition for wrestling. I mean, that's what I heard.
And require opposing teams
require our visitors to wear them as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Not just visitors, opponents. You need to, because when we go on the road.
Opponents and visitors.
Opponent. That's well stated. Okay, opponents.
Denise?
Yes.
So, well, actually.
Do you want me to make the motion?
Yeah, the entire board, actually. We will need motions for these subjects that we are discussing.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion for winter student athletes, home and opponents, to mask in competition with the exception of wrestling competition. Did I get that correct, Megan?
Is that efficient, Megan?
Yes, and with the maybe just a couple extra words that wrestling competition to be held consistent with WIPIO.
Okay.
Guidelines. All right.
I thought I missed something.
Yeah, you got it.
Go ahead, Denise.
Okay, so let me change that, please. I motion for winter student athletes, home and opponents, to mask in competition with the exception of wrestling competitions to be held consistent with WPIAL guidelines.
Do I have a second?
Hang on one second, I'm sorry. I
Oh,
just
sure.
got a text from the cheer coach.
Sure.
And Jen wants to make sure that they're able to, if they're going up in the air, one of the things they've talked about is not masking during a cheer competition because the mask may move and get in the way of the sight lines of a catcher of a flyer.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
I forgot that one.
I would like to make a motion for winter student athletes, home and opponents, to mask in competition with the exception of wrestling and cheer competitions to be held consistent with WPIAL guidelines.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Roll call, please, June.
Okay. Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
Yes.
Ms. Pedigo,
Yes.
Ms. Young, Ms. Young,
Miss Young? Let me text her and see if,
I see her on here.
you know what, let me call, Megan, would it be sufficient? I'll call her on the phone in case.
Sure, just put her on
Okay.
speaker and
I will put her on speaker and let me
we'll
do
repeat
that.
the motion for her.
Yep. 1 second here. Let me get her called, dialed up here. Okay. Give me a minute here.
Hello.
Oh, I'm trying. Valerie?
I'm right here. I was talking to you and you were, I was like,
Oh, I'm sorry. We couldn't hear.
and my internet keeps going in and out, but I was like, I'm here.
Were you able to hear the motion?
Yes.
Okay. And your vote is?
I believe she said yes to the vote. but-
Okay. I'm just making sure. Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Moving forward to the spectator portion.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I would like to make a motion to allow spectators from our home team only, following the guidelines presented by WPIAL. Is that who's giving us the seat capacity? That was the only piece I didn't have.
So Megan, go ahead.
Sure. So the seat capacity comes from a state Department of Health order.
Department of Health.
So you could consider a motion a motion authorizing the attendance of home team spectators at, up to capacity limitations from the Department of Health. Those could change over time. So it would be nice to kind of build it in a way like that, so that if the capacity limits go up, you can automatically adjust accordingly. I think the only question for the other question for the board is whether you want to prescribe a certain number of tickets, or whether you want to allow that the tickets and who gets them and how many to be
priority given
by
to
the administration.
That's what you're making priority given to parents, where the correct.
Right. I think much of the discussion revolved around just parents at this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, until we see a change in the trend here. But I'm wrong on that, then do we need a different motion or?
I'm sorry, Kathy, could you repeat that question?
Yes, so the consensus in our general discussion was the allow of parents to have 2 tickets. But how do you want, or how do we need to address that to make it fair board member wise?
So I think it's hard. It's hard to legislate a very specific number because each of those sports seemed different and the spaces that they're operating are different. I think, I think a motion authorizing parents to attend like home competitions, consistent. I mean, I think you could just put some mushy language in and then kind of trust your administrative team to do that in an equitable way.
So could it be a motion to permit 2 tickets per student?
Sure. It sounded like that was a bright line rule. If you wanted to do that, you're just going to, but you might end up with some of those spaces with some more capacity. It's just a matter of how the board wants to address that. If you think 2 is enough right now to start with,
Go ahead.
That's a policy decision.
Could we just put following our athletic director's recommendation, like put it in administrative's hand of how they want to distribute the tickets, knowing that we prefer parents first, but that if we have extra tickets somewhere and we have somebody else that wants to go in, that Addie has that discretion. I don't want to be so black and white.
Yeah, I don't think
in
we
the
should
motion that
Yeah.
her hands are tied and we have no spectators for our kid or something, and there could be somebody in there.
Yeah, I honestly, I think this one, unlike the other ones, I think this one being a little bit more general, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
What I heard from the discussion, just real quick, and everyone can jump in so far, was that you were going to allow home fans only, home spectators only in, and that you were going to prioritize to make sure that parents had access. Whether that is 2 or 4 tickets, that is, up to you. And then what I heard is any remaining from there on out would be, available on a first come, first served basis until we hit the limit set forth from the Department of Health. That's what I heard.
So would this work? I would like to motion authorizing attendance from home team spectators up to the capacity of the Department of Health, prioritizing parents first.
Yep. I think you can stop right there and
I think right now the clarity of that would be that, depending on that, right, each student athlete would get at least how many tickets for their parents. Just, you don't have to put that in the motion, but for now, for an understanding, would that mean 2 or would that mean 3 or 4 or what? That's the only thing you need to know.
Yeah, up to the capacity of the Department of Health.
I think that's 2 tickets per student athlete though. Joe's not asking for it to be in
the minimum. I mean, if you
Yeah.
had to think about minimums, and the maximum is going to be might depend on the space, minimum of 2.
Also, we used a passless system with our fall athletes and with our volleyball athletes, and we can continue with the same type of system if that's what you'd like to do. I think it worked very well in the fall, and we were able to manage our crowds and get our parents in that way.
So the student athlete, just so we're clear, you could probably leave the motion the same as she read it if the solicitor agrees, but for the actual practical administration of it, each student athlete would be permitted to have basically guaranteed 2 tickets prioritized for their parent, guardian, or somebody that they would put on the list to watch them play, right? And then whatever's left to hit the capacity of the health department would be on a first come, first served basis. Is that right?
Sounds right.
All right.
So Denise, I apologize for asking you to repeat again, but we would need a second on your motion.
Okay, so I would like to motion the authorization of attendance of home team spectators up to the capacity of health, prioritizing parents first.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
No.
Ms. Pedigo,
Yes.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
No, and I would just like to clarify, I would only prefer tickets for the parents and no other opening up to spectators. So that's my reason for no.
motion carries.
Thank you. And
Then,
Ms. Turnbull, so we will need a motion for the youth sports.
so
correct.
I motion to not permit youth sports at this time.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Angus. Can I have a roll call?
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
Yes.
Ms. Pedigo,
Yes.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Ms. Turnbull, I did have a question. Looking back, and I apologize, I'm moving back a step, but the recommendation from the PDE grades K through 5, was there anything in there in regards to pre-K? Do we know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can probably look at that quickly while
Okay.
before we adjourn for
Could
the
we
evening.
come back to, I don't want to leave that out because I know parents were inquiring about that as well.
Okay.
And
then
I
think-
apologize. I apologize for after the fact on that.
No, I'll try to triage that right now.
Okay.
And I do think that Mrs. Lucatoro was also seeking authorization or direction relative to league competition for middle school and high school winter sports.
So we need to do it separately for middle school?
I think they both can be together.
Okay.
If I'm remembering correctly from December, you authorized that practices could begin.
Right.
I'm not sure if we got all the way to competition, which is
Okay.
in light of the
So
fact that you have some schedule.
We need a motion for competition.
To allow competition.
Yes, correct.
So I motion to allow junior high and high school competition for winter sports.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
Yeah.
Ms. Pedigo,
Yes.
Ms. Young, Ms. Young,
Yes.
Thank you.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you. Moving forward to personnel, Mr. Angus.
Yes, this evening we have 4 items up for adoption. The first being the appointment of Leonard Corazzi as our interim business manager, retroactive to January 4th. The second would be the resignation of our director of operations and business, effective January 22nd with regret. The third would be the appointment of Marlon Cantrell as the boys middle school basketball coach for this season. And the last would be the volunteer coach, Rachel Albring, for the bowling volunteer coach for this year. And I would make a motion to accept all 4 of those items.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mrs. Manganello. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
Yes.
Ms. Pedigo,
Yes.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you. Moving forward to the superintendent's report. Dr. Pascarella?
Yep, sorry about that. Just trying to get unmuted. Yeah, I'll make this pretty brief because I've already done a presentation today. But again, I just want to say that, we all respect each other's opinions, and I appreciate the community feedback. I appreciate the support of our staff and our parents and our board. I want to do what is definitely in the best interest of our children here in the school district and our community and staff to keep them safe. So I do respect and appreciate everyone's opinion on this, and just want to say thank you for your efforts, your patience, and believing in the Bridgers and doing the best you can to support our staff and students. And special thanks to all of our staff for all the hard work that they've been doing. And again, in particular, our parents and students going through these difficult times to do the very best they can. And thank you to the board as well.
Thank you. Moving forward to the solicitor's report, Ms. Turnbull.
So I haven't on my phone here because I'm kind of working off the two things. But it does look like the definition of elementary for PDE recommendation purposes does include pre-K.
Okay. So do we need to change anything as far as that motion, or are we good?
I think if the board wants to extend, and I don't have a great working knowledge of your pre-K program, other than I know that you have one. If it's the board's intention to bring pre-K or allow pre-K back on January 25th, you could do that in a separate motion that is aligned with the same wording as our previous one.
I just took it as that grade level was part of the grade level in those giving buildings. So it was for elementary, although they said K-5. Not every school district is fortunate as we are to have pre-K programs. So I assumed that it was in there. But yeah, I don't think it hurts. We do have a couple classrooms. So I surely want to make sure that this is extended to them.
Sure.
So make another motion on that one.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to have pre-K students return to school on a hybrid basis on January 25th with all learning model options.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Curtis. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mr. Angus,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Manganello,
Yes.
Mr. Metz,
No.
Ms. Pedigo,
Yes.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor to adjourn the voting meeting and reconvene the meet and discuss.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving forward to the meet and discuss board meeting. The meet and discuss board meeting of the Ambridge Area School District is held on Wednesday, January 13, 2021. This meeting is being held to go over the agenda for the regular monthly board meeting that will be held on Wednesday, January 20th, 2021 at 7 p.m. virtually. This meeting is being recorded for district purposes. It is or may be published in part or in its entirety on the district's website without the express permission of meeting participants. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angus, Mr. Angus,
He's muted.
Scott?
There we go. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kehoe,
Here.
Mrs. Manganello,
Present.
Mr. Metz,
Here.
Ms. Pedigo,
Here.
Ms. Young,
Here.
Mrs. Fisher,
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Any correspondence for the meet and discuss?
We did have a correspondence and it was from the, I couldn't hear what was going on last meeting. I don't think you
Yes.
read this.
No,
From-
we did not.
Okay, so this is from Coach Astorino, and it was a thank you email to the board. I'll just read that. It says, we continue to appreciate the opportunity to practice and compete so far this basketball season. All protocols and guidelines were followed by coaches and players last week. Everything went extremely well, and that is due to all of you who had a hand in making practice happen for the student athletes of Ambridge. Our boys wanted me to send a thank you to everyone involved in this decision and to all the individuals who have had such a huge help making this possible. To all the district administrators, school board members, athletic trainers, custodians, secretaries, etc., we thank you. Addie, Ron, Amanda, and Meg, and all the custodial staff, Ron, Tom, Cody, George, have been excellent with the transition back to the basketball season. Without their help and kindness towards the boys, the possibility of a season would not be developing at this time. Everything has been organized, structured, and cleaned perfectly. Plus, communication among all the adults involved has been positive and encouraging, which benefits our team tremendously. If I have left anyone off this email, I apologize, and please forward a thank you.
Thank you. We
That's
have
it for the
no student, pardon?
That's it for the correspondence.
Thank you. No student teacher recognition or presentations, public comment regarding agenda items only. And I'll read this again. I don't know that we have any for the meet and discuss, but in light of the state declared disaster emergency, the board has adopted modified public meeting and public comment processes consistent with the Sunshine Law. These modified rules have been published in a newspaper of general circulation and on the district's website. Public comment will only be taken in written formats via email in advance of the meeting. Public comments received in advance will be circulated to the board. All public comments regarding agenda items will be read during the meeting. All other comments will be summarized during the meeting. All comments must include the resident property owner's name and address. June, do we have any for the meet and discuss comments?
No further comment.
Thank you. Moving forward to committee reports, education and technology, Mrs. Manganello.
Yes, the Ambridge Area School District's happy to announce that the online kindergarten and pre-K registration is now open for the 21-22 school year. Kindergarten registration, children turning 5 on or before September 1st, 2021 are eligible for kindergarten registration. We welcome all students living in the district who meet the age qualification. The registration forms can be found on the district website, and then the phone number and email are also listed for any questions. I would strongly encourage everyone emphasizing our district at this time. I'm adding my own little piece and looking at our 3 elementary schools and not charter schools.
Thank you for that information, Mrs. Manganello. Any feedback at all? Any other comments? Nope. Okay, moving forward to finance and budget, Ms. Pedigo.
Thank you, Mrs. President. I have 4 items for discussion this evening. Items number 1 and 2 are in regards to our regular school district and cafeteria monthly bills and salaries. We'll start there. Any discussion on those 2 items? Okay. Item number 3, proposed preliminary budget. It's recommended the administration be directed to have a proposed preliminary budget available for public inspection by January 25th, 2021. And further, the administration will take all steps necessary to apply for Act 1 exceptions, including making the preliminary budget available, making all submissions to the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and compliance with all advertising requirements, including giving notice as required by Act 1 of the district's intention to adopt a budget that includes exceptions, and publishing notice of intent to file for exceptions. Any discussion on item number 3? Okay, and the last item is Resolution 2020-2021-06. It's recommended that the resolution extending the deadline for district tax collectors to file 2020 and 2021 returns with the Beaver County Tax Claim Bureau be adopted. Any discussion on item number 4? Okay, and those are my items for this evening.
Thank you. Moving forward to building and grounds, Mr. Angus.
There's nothing up for discussion this evening.
Thank you. Athletics, Mr. Campbell.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Public relations, Mr. Metz.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Steering and rules, Mrs. Kehoe.
Item number 1 is policy 247 hazing. It is a third reading. Is to maintain a safe, positive environment for students and staff that is free from hazing. Is there any questions? Item number 2, policy 249, bullying/cyberbullying, third reading, is to provide a safe, positive learning environment for district students. Is there any questions? Item number 3, policy 318, attendance and tardiness, third reading, is to establish processes for staff to report unexpected absences, which shall be addressed in accordance with board policy and any applicable individual contract, collective agreement, or board resolution. Questions? Item number 4, policy 332, working periods. It is to make modifications to the school calendar and school schedule as necessary to meet the instructional and health and safety needs of students and staff. Are there any questions on that one? Item number 5 is policy 335, family and medical leave. Third reading, to provide eligible administrative, professional, and support employees with unpaid leaves of absence in accordance with the Family and Medical Leave Act. Does anybody have any questions on that? Item number 6 is policy 907, school visitors. It is a third reading to ensure order in the schools and to protect students and employees. Are there any questions? Madam President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Kehoe. Moving forward to legislative, Ms. Young.
Nothing to discuss at this time.
Thank you. Salary schedule and labor relations, Mrs. Curtis.
Nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Can I have the sunshine law, please?
The Board of School Directors held an executive session on Wednesday, January 13th to discuss personnel matters.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. It was a long meeting. We apologize for that. Have a great night.
Everyone, have a good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you. Good night. Minute.